Hi, friend. This is Alex McRobs, founder of the Mindful Life Practice, and you're listening to the Sober Yoga Girl podcast. I'm a Canadian who moved across the world to the Middle East at age 23, and I never went back. I got sober in 2019, and I now live full-time in Bali, Indonesia. I've made it my mission to help other women around the world stop drinking, start yoga, and change their lives through my online Sober Girls Yoga community. You're not alone, and a sober life can be fun and fulfilling. Let me show you how. Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Sober Yoga Girl. I am really excited in this episode to be sitting down with Sophie Mallowan again today. And Sophie, you might remember if you've listened all the way back to the original episodes of the show, which were about I think it was about 2 years ago at this point that I ever did the first episode with Sophie. She was one of the first guests on the show. I think it's called Finding Freedom from Cannabis. And the episode is about Sophie's journey in quitting smoking cannabis. And Sophie and I have known each other for a really long time. We went to summer camp together. She's also a yoga teacher. So we have so much in common in our journeys. And she is now about 5 months alcohol free. And so I think I might have seen this on Instagram or somewhere. And I was like, oh my gosh, you have to come back on the podcast. And so I'm just really excited to be sitting down today and to hear your journey with sobriety from alcohol. So welcome, Sophie.
Thank you so much, Alex. It is so exciting to be back here. And as I sit here and just listen to you speak, my stomach is doing a little tossy-turny. I just truly feel so excited and so grateful. So thank you for having me. And I just want to say, we were chatting before we hit record. And when I recorded that first podcast episode with you around 2 years ago now, at that moment when I was speaking with you, there was a part of me that just never felt like I could be fully sober or like I could specifically stop drinking. And to now be in the place where that is my reality in a way feels almost a little bit surreal. And it's just such a great reminder, as I was saying, that we can achieve the things that feel outside of our reach. And then at a certain point, those things just become your new normal. And of course, sobriety is something that you always need to be working towards and being mindful of, but it really does feel like, wow, I accomplished this thing that I never thought would be possible for me. So I just want to say that for anybody else who might be listening and might just be thinking or feeling like they could never stop drinking, I was in that place. And I'm sure we'll get into my journey with alcohol consumption, but it feels really liberating to be here now speaking to you. And I'm just so excited. And as I said, so grateful. So thank you.
That's so amazing. And I love that reflection because I think we've all been there in that point of I could never quit drinking. And we were talking about this a little bit before, but it's just so embedded into our culture, our social life, what people do. And so that's really cool that you had that reflection and then had this experience. And now you are alcohol free. I think it's amazing for anyone listening who's on that point of I don't think I could ever do it, because here's someone who had that same thoughts and here you are now.
Totally. And 2 years ago, when we did that original podcast, it's not that I was drinking heavily at the time. In fact, I would say similar to your journey, most of my alcohol consumption was in my early 20s while I was in university and then shortly thereafter as well. And as I moved through my 20s, my alcohol consumption did go down. However, it was speaking in the past tense now because it is no longer, but it was so deeply embedded into my social life, even into the way that I spent time with my family and the way that we celebrated holidays or special occasions. And so there definitely had to be, and there still is, some rewiring around what a celebration means and what that looks like and how I can engage with those moments mindfully, and also how I can spend time with my family and friends in a way that doesn't involve me drinking, even if they are, which is something that I'm personally okay with. I have no problem being around people who are drinking if I choose not to. But there's been an internal process of rewiring, what that means to spend time with other people and how I do that without drinking. And that's been that's been really interesting. And as I was sharing, this was my first Christmas, this is my first holiday season, not drinking alcohol. And that's just a thing that my family does. And that was really interesting. And it was challenging. I will say that there were definitely moments where it almost seemed like the easier thing to do would have been to have a glass of wine, but I know that's not the behavior that would have been in, service to my highest self. So sometimes it's like delaying that gratification for longer term satisfaction, let's say.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I love that. You put that so eloquently,
Mm-hmm.
like what's in service to my highest self.
Totally. And that's what this whole journey really has been for me, because as I shared, I didn't stop drinking from a place of overconsumption at the time. It was just an observation that every single time I chose to drink, I regretted it. And not because of my behavior when I was drunk or drinking, although there was some of that, but I am so sensitive as someone, who also practices yoga and just tries to lead a really mindful life. I'm really aware of the way that my body feels. And therefore, I'm really aware of the way that substances make my body feel. And I really struggled with hangovers. Like, people wouldn't believe me, but I would say even if I had 2 drinks or 3 drinks, I would notice a difference in my energy and in my body the next day. And it just got to a point where it wasn't worth it anymore. It's like my time is too precious for me to be feeling shitty or to be feeling anxious on purpose, because I've made choices that have contributed to me feeling that way. And so there was enough of those days prior to me making the decision that I would no longer drink, that it just was like, it almost felt like I was self-sabotaging in a way. It's like I'm knowingly doing something that is causing me more harm than it is good at this point. And so, yeah, it just felt almost a little bit foolish for me to continue on that hamster wheel of, deciding to drink, regretting it, feeling like shit, and then doing it again. It's just at a certain point, I needed to choose a different behavior. Not that it was easy, but.
Yeah. Wow. And I think that's so interesting and amazing that you could sense how those substances were making you feel, because for me, I only started to develop that awareness once, like literally after sobriety. I mean, I think I knew that alcohol was making me feel like crap, but like on the whole, but I don't think I knew that like 1 or 2 drinks was having that impact. You know what I mean? Like, I think if I had 1 or 2 drinks, I don't think I would notice that shift in my body and my mind and everything. And I think it took a really long time for me to then develop that mindfulness muscle and apply it to everything else, like food and everything else I was consuming.
Totally.
But I just think that's amazing that you were able to really kind of pin that as like, this is what's impacting me. Even with a few drinks, it doesn't make me feel good.
For sure. My partner is also sober. And as I was sharing, he got sober a few years before me. Yeah. And so there was also this element of, so I never really drank at home. Matt and I never really drank at home, but certainly not once he decided to stop drinking. However, when we would go out and I would choose to drink or have a drink or 2 with friends and he didn't, and then I would wake up the next day, I would feel off. And then he was just like feeling great, doing all of the things that he would regularly do. I noticed some jealousy come up in me. And I was like, wow, like that jealousy is really just an expansion of what it is that I desire. And I desire to have that vitality that you have every single day. And the only difference between me and you is that I chose to do something and you didn't. We came home at the same time. We went to the same place. He still got that social engagement. I just was choosing to have drinks while doing it, and he wasn't. So that was really interesting for me, because that happened enough times where I started to feel that jealousy towards him, that he got to feel good and I wasn't feeling good. But really, it just came down to the fact that he made a different choice than me. I think that I've always been pretty sensitive, physically sensitive. I don't know if you know much about human design, but I'm curious to know what your design is if you do. But I'm a projector, and projectors don't have consistent access to their energy. So we have inconsistent energy. And so for me, that means that I require a lot of rest. My energy isn't consistent from day to day. I can have times where I have large energy output and then very small energy output. So I think that being this way also gives me a bit of a heightened awareness to how I'm feeling, because my energy levels are always kind of all over the place. And I really notice a difference when I'm drinking and how that affects it. So that's an element for sure. But I am curious to know what your human design is, if you know.
It's so funny that you bring this up because everyone is talking about human design. Like everyone keeps,
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many times. And the problem was that I didn't know when I was the time I was born. So I would
Okay.
be
Yeah.
guessing, I would be like 7 a.m., 11 a.m., 4 p.m. And I texted my mom and she was like, oh, I don't really remember. I'll have to pull out the baby book. And then I finally texted her last week because I have a new financial coach I'm really excited about, who was like, okay, when were you born? Like, we have to do this human design thing. And I was like, okay, this is serious. I've paid for this coach. So I texted my mom, being like, Mom, I need you to pull out the baby book and like find the time that I was born. So I know the time that I
Yeah.
was born now. It's 10:50 in the morning. So I
Amazing.
have to look it up and figure it out. But
Cool.
when we did guess it with a couple people, when I did guess the time, I think it was like maybe either generator or manifesting generator, I think, but I have to confirm that that's actually the correct time. But anyway.
I can I can see that for you. I mean, let's definitely touch base once you've pulled your chart, but yeah, I feel like you have a pretty large threshold for how much you can handle. Like sometimes I
Yeah.
see all the things that you're offering and I'm like, "Oh my God." Like I'm tired for you, but that's just me. That's just me being a tired gal, you know.
Yeah. 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 So many people say that. It's so funny. Like people are like, where does all this content come from? It's like, we have a magazine, we have a podcast, we have a an online
Yeah, I'm
platform.
retreat training classes. Yeah, it's epic. It's epic. Generators make the world go round. And honestly, I'm not a human design reader. I just really appreciate it. And human design for me has just taught me how to optimize my energy and ultimately, substance use was not helping me optimize my energy. And it just got to a point where, like you, I'm building a business, I'm working full time, I have a partner, family, friends. It's just, there was so much on my plate, and it's like something
Yeah.
has to give, and it has to be the thing that is giving me the least in return. And honestly, that was drinking. And I can honestly say, like, it certainly hasn't been easy, but it has been so beyond worth it, because even in these 5 months, in the last 5 months since I stopped drinking, I have probably seen the most transformation in my personal life than I have, like, I want to say in all of my 20s combined. Like it's been
Wow.
a lot of growth, and we're the same age. And so I feel like at the beginning of my 20s, I went through this phase of healing, really. Like that's when I found the practice. That's when I did my yoga teacher training. I was really committed to my own inner work and growth. And throughout my 20s, I feel like my focus and attention got pulled in some different directions. But having just turned 30, I feel like I'm really back in that place, but it's almost like the next level place. It's like now we're taking everything that we learned in the last decade and we're making the commitment to being sober and living a sober life, which just means more clarity, more authenticity, more connection to self. And yeah, I just feel like everything has almost been supercharged. Like nothing bad has happened as a result of me deciding to stop drinking. Like only good things have happened. And yeah, in the last 5 months, I've also built a regular movement routine, which was really big for me coming out of the pandemic after being pretty sedentary and feeling like I lost a lot of my daily movement. And so getting just back into that super healthy routine where it's like I'm sleeping well, I get up, I work out. It's like I just have more time and energy to give back to myself. And for that reason alone, I just can't see why I would want to go back to drinking, because it just took me away from myself, and it made it harder for me to get to the place where I would want to put more energy into myself, because I just didn't have it accessible. So it's been quite the journey.
It's incredible. And okay, so you said that you've had so many transformations in your personal life and your relationships. Like, what have those, can you give some examples of like what that's been like?
For sure, definitely. So I would say the biggest one has been probably around friendships.
Mhm.
And, I'm really lucky. A lot of the people that I surround myself with are people who have been in my life for a very long time. So whether they're friends from summer camp who have known me since I'm a kid, or friends from elementary or high school that I've grown up with. But what's changed is the way that I relate to them, or maybe rather the way that I spend time and engage with them. Because I don't drink, I'm not really interested in going out to things where the whole purpose of the gathering is to be drinking. So not only has the quality of my friendships, I feel, improved, but also there have been, certain friends where it's like, I love you and it's no hard feelings, but it's clear that that was the thing that was keeping us connected, was that social behavior. And now that that social behavior is not there on my side, there isn't quite as much to connect over. So that's been a big shift. And honestly, that's probably been one of the bigger challenges as well, because yeah, I really value my friendships and I don't want to lose connection with people that I care about. However, it can be really illuminating when you realize what was actually connecting you. And so now when I spend time with friends, it's like high quality time. They get the best of me. It's like we're hanging out more during the day. We're having more deep conversations. We're doing things. We're going places. There's this thing that happens in drinking culture where you just sit around and drink. And
Mhm.
even just from a physical standpoint, like I find that I can't sit for like more than an hour or two. I'm like, I got to get up. I got to move, So it's like more walks. It's more, I just went on a trip with two of my girlfriends from elementary school. That was amazing. And it was in no way surrounded by us getting drunk and going out to the club, but yet we had an amazing, beautiful time. So I would say that's been a major shift. I would also say I've noticed my finances have also really taken a shift. And that's not, I was never spending a ton of money on alcohol because I wasn't drinking a whole lot before I stopped drinking. But it's also the other things that come along with drinking, right? It's like you're going out and you're taking an Uber and you're going to a dinner, and drinks are expensive if you're getting drinks at dinner, and so on and so forth. And I've also done some work and reprogramming around money as a result of having more of this energy. And so that's been really interesting to see a shift in how I relate to money, what I'm willing to spend it on. As I mentioned, also the relationship with my physical self and my movement practice. I've invested in going to a gym that is more expensive than any gym I've ever been to before in my life. But it's like my physical health is my priority. And people will spend $60 to $100 a night on alcohol, depending on where they are and what they're doing. And it's like, why do I feel guilt around taking that money and putting it into myself, into my physical self? So I've been also choosing where I put my money and what results that's giving me. And that's been really cool to see as well. So I would say those would be the main things. I'm really lucky to have a partner who did get sober before me, and we're very much so on the same page with that. So it didn't affect my romantic relationship. But circling back to friendships, what I will say is that you choosing not to drink is going against the grain in current culture. And anytime you do something that goes against the grain, it will naturally trigger people. So I have noticed just me being present at events and not drinking, or talking about the fact that I'm not drinking, can be triggering for some people. And the biggest shift that I've had to make internally is really reminding myself that I'm not responsible for other people's reactions to me.
Mm-hmm.
And that is their responsibility. And that like, I am allowed to live my truth and speak my truth and talk about what's best for me without judging anybody else. However, when you do that, it's natural for you to trigger thoughts and judgments in others. And I've definitely had to deal with some of those thoughts and judgments coming at me. And that's been challenging, even, from close people in my life. But now everyone who's really close to me knows that, like, I'm still the same Sophie. I still love to do the same things. And it's the same me. It's just a better version of me. And there's nothing to be triggered about, it's just, I'm choosing not to do something that I once did. And so that's been an interesting element to it as well.
Wow, so many insights in there. And it's so interesting, the thing that you shared about how in drinking culture people just want to sit around and drink, because what immediately came to my mind was I was recently spending time in the spring, or not in the spring, last month in January, with an ex. And it was an ex who I used to drink a lot with. And he's still a really big drinker and I'm not. And what I was thinking about was how I went to hang out with him at the hotel he was staying at, and everything seemed easier if we just stayed at the hotel. You know what I mean? Like I was like, oh, why don't we just like go for like a little motorbike ride and go to a restaurant like in town? And he just really wanted to eat at the hotel and had a great restaurant and we had a great night. But I don't think it occurred to me until right now that probably had to do with being able to just kind of hang around and drink, which I would do the same thing when I was a drinker, was like, oh, this is convenient.
Totally.
We have alcohol here. We have this restaurant. Why would we, like, I was like, why don't we just go for like a 20-minute motorbike ride to like this random place, And that really kind of interrupts the flow of the drinking night, And so it's so interesting how you don't, and I don't think he was even maybe doing this consciously. But it's like, we don't even think about it. But for us, it's like, okay, where can we like conveniently sit around and drink, even if we're not aware that that's what we're doing?
For sure. For sure. And in a way too, I'm thinking about a few of the parties that I've been to since I stopped drinking. Alcohol gives you energy, right? So Matt and I will have gone to the party. We'll have been there for 3 hours, which in my mind is like a pretty long time. And then we're like, all right, like this is it. We're done. It's past our bedtime. It's midnight. We did it. And everybody else is still going strong. And it's like, how do they have this stamina? And I mean, alcohol is calories and calories is energy. So of course they have the energy to keep going all night long. But I don't have that same stamina that I could have when I was drinking. And really what I think that highlights is that drinking disconnects you from how you're actually feeling. It gives you a false perception of how you're actually feeling, because I'm sure had those people not been drinking, they also would have been tired at midnight. But because they're consuming a substance that's giving them energy, they don't feel tired, but then they wake up the next day. And of course, you're exhausted. So yeah, it really masks the truth, I find. And at the same party, it was so interesting. It was one of the first parties I'd been to, like proper parties, since I had stopped drinking. And one of the girls there asked me if I wanted a drink. And I was like, oh, no, I'm not drinking. And she was just like, oh, I wish I could do that. And I was like, you can, like you can not drink. You can make that choice. But I think when we're in the pattern where when we go out, we drink, it just almost feels like it's not a choice. And it's just something that we do. And the fact is there was plenty of people at that party who aren't drinking, but you need to do some real reprogramming around, is this a choice that I make? Yes or no? Am I a person who drinks when I go to parties? Yes or no? Some people really can play that middle line well, where they can be like, sometimes I go to parties and drink, and then sometimes I don't. It depends what's going on. But I'm just not one of those people. I am so habitual. I am so routine. I also have addictive tendencies. So it's really hard for me to play that gray line. It's just easier for me to be like, yes, I'm someone who drinks when I go out, or no, I'm not. And so I had to change my mind. It's like, which kind of person am I going to be? And I want to highlight that I really did kind of fuck it up before I got it right. Like there were many times where I'd be like, oh, I don't want to drink tonight. I don't want to drink tonight. Okay, fine. 1 glass of wine, 2 glasses of wine. Right. And then wake up the next day. Why did I do that? I wish I just didn't do that. Let's try again next week. I'm not going to drink tonight. Okay, fine. Just 1 glass of wine this time. Same thing the next day. And so I just have to be a person that says no. And then you don't have to waste your internal energy on on negotiating. Am I going to drink tonight? Yes or no? What do I have going on tomorrow? It's just no. It's just like, no, I'm not drinking. You can't convince me. I've already made up my mind. My mind was already made before I got here. And that makes it easier for sure. I have a really hard time playing in that middle zone. And I think a lot of people do. So,
Yeah, totally. And so how has your, have you seen transformations in your work since you've been alcohol free?
yeah, I mean, as I mentioned, I do work full time. I also have a business. I'm a yoga teacher, business coach, mentor, and I really just have so much more energy to give towards my business, which is my current priority and goal in my life right now is to build that. And so since I work full time, I use Sundays. That's like I get a lot of work done on Sundays for my personal business. And I just wouldn't be able to be growing at the speed that I am if it weren't for me not drinking, because like I said, I would likely be hungover. I would likely feel like shit. I would probably make excuses about why I shouldn't do the things that I need to do. I have not only more motivation and more energy, but I also think just more inspiration when you're clear-minded and when you're in the flow of just the present moment and being grateful for what you have. I find that inspiration comes so much more easily. So that's been really interesting to witness too. I would definitely say, yeah, more energy, more inspiration, and just like more drive in all areas of my life though. But really, as I mentioned, business is such a priority for me that I see it the most there. But more drive in terms of showing up to my daily movement, eating well. It's just like I have so much more life force to give to the things that really matter to me. And so that's been cool to see, and it pays off, like literally and figuratively, it pays off.
It's amazing. And are you still working full time? You work at full time in yoga as well with Moto
Yes.
Yoga. Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. So I work full time for Moto Yoga, which is a yoga franchise company here in North America. And then I've built my own business as well. During the pandemic, it was originally offering private yoga and teachers mentorship, and since then it's kind of evolved more into business coaching, which has been really exciting for me. I still teach yoga, just less and mostly online now, not in person. That was a big change over the pandemic. But yeah, so I'm a busy gal. I'm a busy gal, and my partner Matt's really busy too, so we both need to really manage our time and our energy if we want to be able to make our relationship a priority, which we do. So it's like with everything, there's got to be a bit of give and take. And for me, just choosing to surrender alcohol so that I can call in some of these other things is just like so worth it for me. So worth it for me. And one thing that I want to share that I think would be helpful for people, it was so helpful for me. Like this was such a turning point for me in my sobriety. There would be a few days like after work where I don't know if you still feel this way, where you're just like, fuck, I wish I could have a glass of wine. Like, you know, if there was a day that I would have a glass of wine, or if there was a day that I would have a drink, like it's right now, like this would be the moment where it would feel so good. And I just want that so bad. And my friend sent me this TikTok, and I wish I remembered the creator's name, but I don't. But the creator was saying that when you crave a drink, you're not actually craving the drink. What you're craving is a shift in your energy. You want to change how you're feeling. So in that moment, after a long work day where I'm just like stressed out, anxious, burnt out, whatever it is, I think that I want the drink, but what I want is to not feel the way that I'm feeling. So now what I try to think about when I find myself in those situations is like, what can I do to shift my energy? Like, how can I change the way that I'm feeling? Movement is so major for me. So oftentimes it is like, get up, move my body, do something to lift my heart rate. But also it might be like, okay, I actually need to like down regulate, take some deep breaths, make a hot tea, Maybe it's like connect with a friend and vent, get it out so it can be like done with and over. But that was really transformative for me. It's like, no, I don't actually want to drink. And even in the days when I would have a drink, that's why it never worked. That's why one drink becomes two and two becomes five. And then you're hungover in bed all weekend. It's because it's not the drink that you want. It's something else that you're trying to avoid or trying to shift. And so learning how to manage my energy in that way has been really major too. And that was just such a great tip that I was like, oh, this is such a game changer. It really, really shifted the way that I think about wanting a drink.
That's so insightful. And you know what's interesting is I actually have those moments. I noticed it in myself at the very end of a yoga retreat, actually, when everyone goes home and it's been like, which is so crazy because I run these like sobriety retreats, but it's like
Yeah.
we have such an intense, amazing period of time together, a week or 10 days, and then everyone goes home and I'm just alone. And that is when I want to drink. And that for me is probably just like that shift in energy of whatever it is. Maybe it is that I need to be like, you know, meditating or journaling or going inward and practicing self-care after being so external. But that's just so
Totally.
interesting that you say that.
Yeah, I listened to a really great podcast recently with Jay Shetty and Trevor Noah, and I just love Trevor Noah. And he was talking about how when he does, and I think you'll be able to relate to this, but when he does a comedy show, it's this big high, right? And then you go back to your hotel room and you're alone. And it's very different than what a band might experience when they're on tour, because as a comedian and as a yoga teacher running retreats, you're mostly doing it alone, right? Unless you have an assistant or someone there helping you. It's like you're the one in charge of curating this environment for other people and you're in service to others. Like Trevor Noah was talking about how I make other people laugh. That's my job, to give other people joy. And you're holding these really meaningful containers for people. And then when you go back to your room and you're alone, it's like there's this real emptiness because you've given so much. And of course, there's some you do receive as well, but I don't know that it's necessarily like equal in that way. And I think just chemically what's happening internally is pretty intense. Like you go from having all of this connection and deep meaning to being alone. Like he was speaking about how this is a big reason why, unfortunately, a lot of comedians struggle with mental health and suicide. And it's because you're on that big high, and then it's like, boom, the exact opposite of that. So in a way, I'm not surprised to hear that that's something that you experience, because I think that's totally normal. Like after spending so much time with people and being so extroverted, as you said, and then just going 180 and doing the complete opposite, like it's a little jarring to the system, you know? And so something that Trevor talked about in that episode was, yeah, just resourcing and reaching out to community, and whether that's like a phone call with family or friends or someone to help you in that transitional time, because I can feel how that would be lonely for sure.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And I guess that's the
It's a
power
good
of,
episode.
I'll have to check it out. I guess that I was thinking that's the power of one of the beautiful things about having our Zoom community kind of a constant in my life is that a lot of the times there is like a call I can hop on, or I'll just be hosting, you know. And so I just like go straight into like sort of connecting again in a different way. And there's
Cool.
a real benefit in that too.
Totally. Oh, I love that. I love that. So now I'm sitting here thinking, it's like, okay, it's been 5 months, and like there are definitely moments where, as I've said, it's been like, yes, this is the new me.
Yeah.
It's easy. And then there's moments where it's like, as I was sharing, I'm going to a bachelorette party this year. I'm going to a music festival this year. These are all going to be things that I'm doing for the first time sober. And I'm just curious if you have any advice for me about how to navigate these engagements, these celebrations without alcohol for the first time, if you have any words of advice that you'd give to yourself.
Oh, I love that question. You know, I'm thinking back to, so my first wedding was actually my sister's wedding, which was really a little bit difficult because, sorry. So it was a little bit challenging because it was like a 3-day event and there were so many of our, childhood friends from summer camp, and there was like this big, like the partying was just kind of wild. Like, partying, we're all staying in this cabin. People were doing like kitchen raids, getting drunk and like, eating the cake out of the
Yeah.
kitchen, just all this stuff happening. And I was a little nervous going into it because I was one of the only sober people at that wedding. And I remember what really helped in that whole time was just being like really open and honest with people. And I've always been that way. And it sounds like you are too, because I think the biggest thing is when people don't understand your real motive of why you're doing things. And this would happen like when I would have friends in my life who would say, I'm just doing a dry January month or whatever. I'm just taking a break from alcohol. And I would be like, come on, have a drink, come out with us, drink, 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 when I was on the other side of things. And I think it was because I didn't truly understand like this person, the reason why the person was doing this. Like I'm serious about if someone had said to me, I'm going
Mm.
alcohol free because I'm really struggling with my mental health, like I would be an asshole if I then was like, come drink with me, come drink with me, And so,
Totally.
yeah. And so what I felt is like the biggest helpful thing is me just being honest with people of like, yeah, I was really struggling with my drinking.
Mm.
And I remember I was 150 days sober at my sister's wedding, and there was just no questions, no bothering. Everyone was really supportive. People were like celebrating the moment, like the milestone that I had got to. And so I think that's been the biggest thing. And then also just don't be afraid to like sort of do your own thing a little bit. So like in a lot of social events, I go late because then I can miss sort of, I feel you might relate to this too, but before people get a little tipsy, I can almost feel the nervous collective energy of like a social engagement. Do you
Mm.
feel this at all?
Yeah, that's a good observation. Oh, totally. I can totally relate to that. I don't think I've consciously tapped into
Yeah.
that, but I know what you're speaking of. And now that you've mentioned it, I bet you I'll be aware.
Yeah. And so what I have found is it actually works better for me to show up late. And I wasn't doing this intentionally, but the reason why was because I used to teach back before COVID, when I first got sober, I used to teach bar class on Friday night. It was like 4:30 p.m. to 5:30 p.m. So by the time I would go out and meet people, and people in Abu Dhabi would start drinking like, right after work at like 4 or 5. And so by the time I would get to the party, they were already like a few drinks in, and sometimes I would tell people like, yeah, I have a bar class, I'm coming late. And I would be getting phone calls in the car, be like, where are you? And it was like, they were already tipsy and like, had lost track of time or whatever. But by the time I got there, I realized this is actually better because I've missed that whole thing. I don't have to endure it. And now you're all just drunk and
Mm,
happy and chatting with me. And then I would just be there for like an hour, kind of show up and whatever, and then go home. And so that worked really well for me, is like being a bit late. Now in the wedding
cool.
scenario, I couldn't do that because it was like this long 72-hour thing, but I built my own things into it. So actually I think it was who asked me to teach yoga at the wedding, like on the morning on the dock. And that was really great because it was like it just gave me like a different thing, and it was like my thing, and it grounded me. And so just like
Cool.
finding little moments of like things that you can do for yourself as well.
Yeah, I feel that. I totally feel that because as we've been talking about a lot of times when people drink, like it can just go on for so long. And when you're not drinking, you're more aware of what your needs are. Like I'm tired, I'm hungry, I don't know, need to go to the bathroom, whatever it is, and like giving yourself permission to step away. And that's something that I've noticed actually Matt does a lot, especially when we're spending time with family and like we're at a family's house for like a day or a weekend. He'll kind of just like go off and like go lay down upstairs in the bedroom and read his book or whatever. And I'm like, oh, like you're just honoring what it is that you need. And I respect that so deeply because I mean, we could do a whole episode on people pleasing and how deeply that's ingrained. And probably that's a part of the reason why I continued drinking for as long as I did, because I knew that I wanted to stop, but a part of me cared more about what other people thought about me not drinking than me doing what was right for me. And I think in this journey of sobriety, so much of it really is just like, what do I need? And of course, not intentionally trying to harm others in the process, but if it displeases others in the process, then that's, again, not my responsibility, right? It's just what needs to happen in order for me to feel well resourced. So I can imagine the 72-hour wedding thing to be challenging. And that's how I'm feeling about this upcoming music festival. But at the same time, it's like, this is something I want to do. I love music. I love dancing. And I want to show to myself that like I can do these things without alcohol, and I can experience joy and just like celebration without alcohol. And I think, once you have a few under your belt, you're like, all right, like I can do this. This is good. Like Christmas was a big thing for me, getting through Christmas, New Year's. I was like, okay, we got this. And so more of that to come. And I'm sure that there will always be more of that, but I just can't emphasize enough how if you're someone who's thinking about quitting drinking, just like give it a shot, and like, it's okay if you don't get it right the first time around. I did not get it right the first time around, but finally I'm in a place where it's like, I've built up enough time and trust in myself that I don't need to drink when I go out. And it just feels so good to go home, sleep well, wake up the next day, and just be able to do the things that I'm truly passionate about, build my business, take care of my body, spend time with my family, my friends, eat healthy, like practice yoga. It's just like, life is short. Those are the things that I actually want to be doing. I don't actually want to be sitting around and drinking all night. Like that's not what I actually want. So it's just like really aligning your behavior with your desire. And yeah, it's not to say that it's easy, but it's so worth it. And I just really want to encourage more and more people. And I want to thank you too, because you've been such an expander for me in that way. Like I said, like when we first had this conversation a few years ago, I was like, there's just no way. I was like, there's just no way that could be me. And I respected it even then so deeply, but to have those people in your life who go against the grain and like go first, like that's like the true definition of what a leader is. It's like, I'm going to go first, even though I don't know what that's going to be like. And like to not have other people in my world that have done it first, like that's just like true leadership. And I just want to honor that. And like, I see that in you, and I see that in my partner, Matt. Like he went first, he made it easier for me because he was like, ripped off the Band-Aid with the families and was like, I'm sober. And everyone's like, are you okay? Like, should we be concerned about you? And he's like, no, you don't need to be concerned about me. Like, this is the best decision that I could have made. So yeah, I want to honor the leader in you that was just willing to go first, because I think that's so brave and yeah, it's so expansive for all the people in your life. And yeah, I'm so grateful for this conversation and this friendship and yeah, for you leading the way. So thank you.
Oh, Sophie, thank you so much. This has honestly just been an amazing episode. It's been amazing to hear how your journey has progressed and evolved and where you are now. And maybe we'll do it again in another year or two.
I would love that. I would love that. And I would love to have
check-in. Yeah.
Totally. I would love to have you on the podcast, on my podcast too. We can talk about business, because I'm so curious about the mindful life practice and how it's grown, and Sober Girl Yoga and all of the amazing things that we're doing. So we'll be in touch. And yeah, I'm sending you lots of love. Thank you so much for having me, and soak up that Bali sun for this Canadian girl.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Sophie. Take care.
Oh, my pleasure.
Hi, friend. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Sober Yoga Girl podcast. This community wouldn't exist without you here, so thank you. It would be massively helpful if you could subscribe, leave a review, and share this podcast so it can reach more people. If we haven't met yet in real life, please come get your 1-week free trial of the Sober Girls Yoga membership and see what we're all about. Sending you love and light wherever you are in the world.